For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Alchemy of Pain, a podcast that focuses on specific moments in people's lives that could have broken them, but instead it ended up making something really beautiful. This interview today is very serendipitous for me. This young woman and I go back over 30 years ago when she was just a young teenager and I was a youth leader. And I always saw her joy and her spirit and her talent, and I knew she would do great things. But interestingly, and this is probably a podcast for another day, we met in a church that ended up being a very toxic place. And when that place blew up, so did many of the relationships that I had over those course of many years of my young adult life. And now full circle, TikTok of all things brought me back to Karin Jakubowski, who I knew as Karin Hoffman back in the day. And Karin, you can find her on Instagram or TikTok as Momnificent. She has created an entire brand. And actually, Karin, let's start there. Tell us about Momnificent. What is that?
So 3 years ago, I started a podcast, and it's a guesting podcast. So I invite guests on to help moms with anything when it comes to raising their kids, because I had learned a positive approach to work with kids in their challenging moments. And I used it at school. I've used it for over a decade. And I just got to the point where I was like, if I was able to learn this, I want to teach it to any parent to help them with their kids, since we go to college for a degree, for our career, for our entire life, and nobody goes to 1 hour of school to help you raise a child. And yet everybody looks at everyone else thinking they're all doing it perfectly. And we're all trying to figure out how to make it happen, and throw in a behavior issue with your kid, and you just can feel so helpless. And I saw kids and parents with that feeling. And I always wanted to help empower moms to really know and have what it takes to help their child in those most difficult moments. And so I started the podcast to help any and all mom with any and all topics when it comes to raising their kids, because there's so much out there and people don't know where to turn, and people need something quick. Tell me something today that'll help me like tomorrow and make that difference. And so that's what launched Momnificent.
And Karin, I know right now people are like, Momnificent, let me get there. I need some of that, because there is no handbook. And let me say this, I forgot to say this in the intro. You are an award-winning principal of an award-winning school in Delaware, and you have worked with kids for a long time. You have many different degrees and certifications. But what's interesting is you're not a mom yourself. So what do you say to people that say, how can you be momnificent and you're not a mom?
So people have said that to me, and I'm like, you're right. And I just love kids. I have such a heart. And you know what, Brenda? See, I wasn't a good kid myself. Like, I lied, I stole, I cheated in elementary school. No one believes it.
I don't believe it, because I used to know you and I thought you were the perfect kid.
Right, exactly. And so I know what it feels like. And I felt bad. And I never want a kid to feel that way, because I know how it feels. And so learning this positive approach just has put me on fire to help those kids. I actually have a little heart for the underdog, and there's a story behind every behavior, and I go and search and seek out that story to really help the child, and not just only deal with what happened in that moment. Yes, there's consequences, but there is so much more.
So the goal of this podcast is to talk about a pain that changed us forever. And I always say, which one do we pick? Because there are many different painful experiences in our life. I love your story, though, because I think many of our listeners and viewers are going to relate to this. And it is the J word, jealousy. How did jealousy shift you from where you are and take you to this very successful brand and person and influencer that you are today? Tell us the story.
So about, I don't know, Brenda, I'm going to say like, guess like it's about like eight years ago, possibly 7. I heard of someone that I knew that I had kind of lost connection with. And I heard that they were like doing a speaking event for women. And something inside me was like jealous. Like I wanted to do that, but like I wasn't doing what was I going to do? I'm a school principal, right? Or I think I was probably an assistant. I was an assistant principal at the time. And I was like kind of surprised that I felt that, because it was like, where did that come from? And I remember one night I Googled and searched the person online, and I see this incredible website and all these pictures, and they're speaking and they look like they have this like amazing, beautiful, perfect life and world. And I was like, how did they do and become all that? And I never forgot it. Like it like ate at me, like in a way where I was like, I was so impressed and like proud of them. And
Annoyed.
underneath like just really, jealous as well. And I sat on it, and time went by, and fast forward a few years up until about 2 years ago this month, Brenda. Oh my gosh, 2 years ago this month, I was crying on the floor of this office, my office here at home, crying because I couldn't keep all the balls in the air. And I couldn't show up and be present for my husband the way I wanted to. I couldn't keep all the balls up in the air. That at this time, now I'm a principal. As of 2 years ago, I was a principal, and it was just too much emotionally, physically. I call it like I hit my rock bottom. Like I literally was laying on the floor of this office crying, saying like something's got to change, and pair that with feelings of low self-esteem, low self-worth, and low self-confidence my entire life. I always struggled to fit in. I always felt like the fifth wheel. I always felt like I wasn't popular. And I always felt like on the outside, trying to feel good about myself my entire life. Like other people's validation of me made me feel like, okay, like I'm worth something. And people would be like, look at you. At that time I had a podcast. You're a principal of an incredible school. You have your doctorate. Like you're amazing. And Brenda, inside right here, I still struggled, and there was a mismatch. And I was like, why? Why don't I feel that all the time? And why do I have to, only if someone validates me do I feel like, oh yeah, now I feel worth it. And that week I interviewed a guest on my podcast, and she is a certified life coach. And after the podcast offline, all my podcast guests, at the end of them, I literally feel like they're my kindred spirits. Like they're the most beautiful people I have ever met in the entire world. Like it's so precious. And offline, somehow I felt comfortable with her enough to open up about what I was struggling with, one little piece of it. And she walked me through this strategy. And by the end, like I felt lighter, like the emotions had just like released more. And I was like, what did you do? That was incredible. And she's like, yeah, I could coach you for like 2 months. And I was like, no. Where did you learn what you know? Because that's what I need. And in 2 weeks, I was sitting in a course for an entire week in Texas in a first level life coach certification course for me, because I needed something to help me with that mismatch of like this low self-confidence, low self-esteem that I struggled with my entire life. And it was through that personal coaching that ended up finishing the following summer down in Texas for 2 weeks, became a master certified life coach and all the things. And it was a breakthrough. And I have never been the same. And you know what came in tandem with that training? I stayed and extended my stay to finish a speaker's course. And at the end of that, I stood up and gave a signature talk that put people in tears. And I realized the story of my life is a story that can unlock someone in a feeling like maybe they're caged in their world to be empowered. And because of that, I am able to stand without anybody validating me, knowing that I am powerful, I am strong, I am confident, and what I say changes people's lives. And all of a sudden, you know what they taught me in that training? Karin, when you saw that person's website and you saw that person speaking and something in you was jealous, it's because it was actually in you the whole time. You were born to be that. That's why that comes up for you. And I was like, it was such a revelation. I know I've gone on and on, and you're like, Karin.
No. And I want to stop here for a minute because, first of all, goosebumps, and talk about having an easy guest to interview, because I can just say a question and boom, you go, which I love. I think we're kind of a little like that way. Let's sit on this a minute for our viewers and our listeners right now who are getting gotten by the comparison trap, looking at others and finding themselves lacking, feeling like a victim rather than rising up as a victor, and maybe being at that point of despair. It's like, why even bother? By the way, this whole speaker thing is replete with that kind of torment, because there are so many amazing speakers out there doing lots of inspiring things. But is there ever such a thing as too much inspiration? Isn't there enough room for all of us? And so this person who had done so well, and now look, here you are doing so well, and I have been cheering you on and watching you. And so what has been the most gratifying thing? So you learned that, first of all, the jealousy instigated something that was inside of you the whole time.
Isn't that amazing?
You then took that.
That is incredible. That is so powerful.
For everybody, because everybody's jealous of someone or something at some point.
Yes. It was just completely liberating.
And instead of feeling bad about yourself for being jealous, because we know we're not supposed to be jealous, I so admire that you were vulnerable enough to reach out and share with someone who could then hand you a lifeline. So tell me about this master certified life coaching. How does that play out in everyday life, maybe as a principal or in your Momnificent podcast or your social posts?
So now when kids come to me upset about another kid, there's literally one simple strategy within that entire course that I use with them to help them get perspective about that situation and help get them out of that negative emotion that just like drains you because you're so mad at someone, but sometimes you don't have that opportunity to tell them exactly how you feel. So we just bottle it all up.
So now we're all on the edge of our seat. What is this one trick, one tip that can shift everything?
So it's a perspective taking 3-step strategy, and you actually stand up and you like position yourself and you act like you're like talking to the person that you're so upset about in the moment. Maybe it's your kid, your spouse, another coworker, anybody. And through the whole process that I walk you through, it helps lift that negative emotion that sometimes you just can't seem to shake, or you're up all night thinking about it. Like we've all had those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, I just can't get rid of this. Like, can someone just take it away from me? And it gives you perspective after you do this whole process. So now I do it with kids. I've done it with principals. I do it with women. And if you follow me on Momnificent and sign up to get my emails, you'll hear all about my upcoming webinars, to find access to these webinars. And that's just like a sliver of the life coaching that I do and that I have done with women, individual, and also in group for moms. And I also work with principals because principals deal with so much like teachers do on a daily basis, and nobody's teaching us those strategies for your own emotional wellness and the mental health wellness. So it's just incredible and just huge.
Well, I love that you are a content creating machine. I mean, I cannot go on my social without there being something new. And yet it's really something I can run with and take with, even though I'm not a mom. So I'm thinking about the young girl who looked like the golden child. To me, you were the good girl, always doing everything right, but there was something else going on there that none of us knew. And then I'm thinking about children in school today, maybe that are seen as problem children. And I have a heart for them as well, because sometimes they are unseen and they are put in boxes that can shackle them for the entirety of their lives. What would you say to anybody out there that's listening that maybe is dealing with a problem child, and how to reframe it so that that child isn't put in a box?
So a really huge piece of information or tool or advice that I learned actually through the life coaching was, when I am bothered or triggered by someone, there's actually something in my life that I am doing similar to myself or someone else. And that is such a hard truth and pill to swallow. And I just want to encourage anybody who is like, my kid this or my student that, as hard as this might sound to you, try to find a quiet moment and sit with yourself and just ask yourself, where do I do this same type of behavior? Where do I say this to myself or someone else in my life? Because, well, what I've learned is perception is projection and projection is perception. And what you are perceiving is actually a projection of something that is probably happening inside if we were to really be that honest. And that can be really painful and hard to do. And so, like I teach moms, when your kid's upset, you got to take care of yourself first. Like, you got to get calm and in control of your body and do whatever it takes for you to be calm, because your child's going to mirror and match you. So when you're calm, they will eventually, it might not happen right away, and you might not know what to say right away, but eventually, if you get elevated, they're just going to keep escalating. And if you can take, and I teach them to take their deep breaths and find that place where you're calm and in control of your body, and choose and talk to them only in your even toned voice. Don't talk with emotion. Don't talk down at them. Don't talk with your anger. Use that even tone of voice. I say it's like talking to someone on the elevator, like, hey, how are you today? Which is what I do when kids are in trouble. I heard you kicked so-and-so on the playground. Like, what's up with that? And there's certain questions that I teach moms to ask their kid, because there's that story behind every behavior. And if I can invite you to explore what is the story behind your child. And what I love about this process, that I sell the course to it. I videotaped myself teaching this course, because you can learn it. If I learned it, I believe anybody can learn it. And it has certain questions with a certain tone of voice and a certain process to it, where I actually got a kid to admit he peed on the bathroom wall at school. And his mom on the phone was like, my kid would never do that. And the moment of joy when I handed the phone over to her son and he admitted, that's what this process does. It gets to why. Wouldn't it be amazing to know why your child actually does what they do in those unexpected moments? And this process gets to that. And so, like you said, I've learned it, and it's just a ninja trick to be able to get a kid with behaviors to really open up and help us understand why they're doing. Might not happen at first, because kids look at you like you have 5 heads, because nobody ever asks them why. Never asks them questions where it's safe enough to share. And what they say, there's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes I have to coach kids with that. There's no right or wrong answer. Just what was up with that? And that's my magic phrase.
Would that have changed our lives back in the day, to be honest? Because honesty is what's freeing. The thing about the place that we had both been in, this toxic church situation, nobody was allowed to be honest, because you would get in trouble for being honest. And I want to say this, if anyone's watching this who remembers back in the day, and again, I hesitate to even go there. It's another part of my story. It's another part of Karin's story. But I always say, if you have not talked to me in the last year, let alone last 10 years, you don't know me. Because I'm not the same person I was back then. Karin is not the same person she was back then. We are constantly evolving, and we do each other a disservice to put anyone in the box of our memory.
Yeah.
Because then we're limiting who they've grown to be. And I so admire who you have grown to be, Karin. Truly, you are a force to be reckoned with, and your star is on the rise. I saw a post that you had today, and I loved it. It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Oh my gosh, that is like the mantra of my life, because you can say the same thing and it can come out. I mean, I really harp on like saying things respectfully, because I want people to talk to me respectfully. So I'm going to talk to you respectfully, and you can say the same thing and it can come across such with an attitude or offense, and the same thing is as gentle and as welcoming. And like, I coach parents with this. Like, they call me and they're like, I can't talk to the teacher because this concern came up, and I walk them through, like, you're going to start with I just made a video on this. You're going to start with a positive, and this is going to this is how your voice is going to sound. And when they hear your voice, they're going to hear your heart, because we're all showing up, I believe, ready, doing the best we can. Yeah, is there like 150 things we all think we all should change about each other, possibly in a moment? Yeah. And we're all doing the best we can. And if we start with that premise, then I love the question, like, help me understand. I heard this about my child, or my child came home and said this, or it sounded like this happened in the class. And I say, I teach the parents, ask the question, help me understand what happened there, because there's that story behind every behavior, and then so on and so forth.
And that's coming from a posture of wanting to understand, not reprimand.
Mm.
So that is the flip side of it. And I love that approach. So, Karin, you were triggered, and you took that and said, ooh, there's something more here. And then you went on and created Momnificent, continued success as a principal. You're a prolific content creator. You even entered a bodybuilding contest.
Yes.
See, this is what I love about you, because you're like, okay, wait a minute. Whatever bugs me, I'm going to run right toward it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing. That was the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. I would cry doing the weights, because you have to do the weights till you fail. And it's just the most painful thing I've ever experienced, to the point where my trainer was like, you work out harder than the guys I train. And he saw it in me. He said, you could be a figure competitor. And I was like, what is that? I had no idea about this entire world that exists. And he showed me something, and I worked for an entire year and got second place at the end of it, and saw that was the gift to myself of what I could do and what I could become, where all my life I have lived trying to please someone else.
I have read that resilience is born when we do hard things. Seems like you run toward hard things. You don't let them get you down. And I think that's inspiring. I think this interview is going to relate to a lot of people. So, for the moms out there, what's the one nugget of advice you would give them before we close? And then I want your final words about people that are dealing with jealousy and what to do with it. But to moms, this is and I go for it, because I never speak to moms. So this is going to be refreshing to everybody out there.
So what I would say to moms is, when you feel like you're failing, when you feel like you're embarrassed because your child did something, when you feel like you don't match up as a parent to what you see on social media because it all looks perfect and it really isn't. I call them beautiful moments in our life. None of our lives are like that every second of the day, as much as it makes us feel that way. I want you, mom, listening to this right now, to know that you are amazing. You are powerful. You are strong. And if you ever need a reminder, find me, look me up, because my superpower is encouraging with love, and just, I'll remind you how incredible and awesome and powerful you are, because no matter if your child does or doesn't make the mistake or succeed, no matter whatever you feel, maybe ashamed because your child deals with things that you feel like other parents aren't dealing with, I just have such a heart for you as a mom. And if you ever need a reminder, call me. I will just remind and support you, and just get alongside you and remind you you're doing an awesome job. You're doing the best you can. Thank you for what you're doing. Your child's going to thank you one day. You are doing amazing. And I don't think moms hear that enough.
So, at the very heart of the word encouragement is courage. And don't we all need courage to do whatever we have to do, whether it's be a mom or be out there in the world as a professional or be a partner in a relationship? But we all need courage. So, we certainly need lots of encouragement. And by the way, how can people find you? Aside from online, social, Momnificent, your website is?
My website is a different name, so don't be too confused, but I'm sure Brenda will put in the notes. It's www.educationalimpactacademy.com. Educationalimpactacademy.com, because the things that I've learned, I want to educate people and impact parents and schools and teachers and women. And yeah, I'm on a mission to really help share the breakthrough that I experienced. I want every woman to feel that.
I definitely say that I weave into any speech I give or workshop. It's all about the relationship between you and you. Until you settle that, there's nothing that you can give, because it will all be based on external forces, and your life will go up and down like that. So for someone who has yet to settle that relationship with themselves and is getting gotten by jealousy and comparison, and they're feeling like imposter syndrome is winning the day, what would you say to that person?
Well, I would say DM me for a free discovery
Slide
call.
into my DMs.
I know, but really, like contact me and let's do a discovery call and see if I can't help you. Maybe I can share a resource of something that can help you, because life can be incredibly awesome and amazing and beautiful. And if I hadn't experienced what you literally said, I would still be back frustrated with people see this about me, but why don't I see that about myself? I mean, Brenda, I'm a principal, and there was a day in my life where I was scared to death that I could actually become a principal. I was that insecure in myself. It is a complete miracle that I'm doing everything I'm doing. The first video I made on my Facebook profile page took me like 5 trials, someone coaching me to tell me to do it, because I was so scared to put myself out there. I was so fearful. Like, yeah. So if you feel any of that, I just want to encourage you to, if it's not me, like, people can say the same thing and hear it from someone. So be you. Like you said, like, everyone has a story, and everyone's story in this world can change and impact and encourage people. So you are beautiful, and you are individual, and you are here for a reason and a purpose. And there's no one like you, and no one does it like you. So be you.
Well said. Dr. Karin Jakubowski. I love saying that. That makes my heart swell with pride. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for being so available to the audience. I hope you will reach out to her. Look, we don't hesitate to get help. We get professionals to do simple things like make our look. When you knew me, I had dark hair.
Down here.
I mean, it takes a team of professionals to pull this off. And yet, when we face these struggles in life, there's no shame at all to reach out and get some help, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's a life coach. Great resources are there. We're rooting for you to find your courage, and we are so happy to encourage you. Thank you for tuning into this edition of The Alchemy of Pain. I'm Brenda Viola, and thank you, Karin, for being here.
You're welcome.